Hey everyone. My name is Joey from HAX VGC. I recently won the Houston Regionals for Premium Vanguard. I played a Shadow Luard Blaster deck, or a Blasted Luard deck. And here's my list. I want to share it with you guys. So, opening up, our starter is a Dragwizard Vicreau. He just generates a lot of resources and has some great interaction with the deck. But I'll explain that more as we get through the deck list. So the way I like to have it separated is that I have the core units, probably the more, I'd say, techie units, and then I have my triggers. And so your core grade 3 for sure is a Dragfall Luard. And so he's really awesome. He has a free stride ability. But that's not what makes him really special. He also has a free ultimate stride ability, which comes really in handy because your ultimate stride is your good chunk of your win con. Not absolutely your win con, but it definitely won me a lot of games at this tournament. So yeah, he also generates board while minusing your opponent's board, and so that's just free value right there. So yeah, you run 4 of him. He's a great card. So next you have Blaster Dark, and so Blaster Dark is the grade 2 you want to ride. It's probably more like your ride chain. Like if you want to ride anything, you want to ride Blaster Dark, and then you want to ride Dragfall on top. Blaster Dark pops the starter basically early game if they run starters, or what's called just pops whatever they call. It's really free value. And then his second skill, which makes him super busted in this deck, is he has this discard, and he gains Twin Drive if the opponent has no rear guards. And so being able to pitch a grade 1 to set up Ritual in this deck is super value. And so really, if you can ride him, pitch, get 2 drive checks out of it, you have a higher chance of sacking them, but you're also setting up for your later game state. And so he's 10 out of 10 run at 4. So next, I run 4 Slaptail Dragon. This is another core unit because it has some early game presence, but mostly it's affecting the drop zone is why you run it. It counts as a grade 1 in the drop zone. And so if you're discarding this card early game or guarding with it early game, you don't feel as bad. You don't feel like you're losing units because A, you can return it with Dragfall's ability, but B, it also sets up for Ritual cost. So this card helps push you from like Ritual 2, Ritual 3 early game to Ritual 4, Ritual 5 once you're striding. And that really comes up if you can get it. But I'll get to that later. Next, you run 4 Dragsaver Esras. And so the reason this is a core unit is because A, it's a pop target, and so you can pop your starter, you can pop another unit, one of your triggers, and just gain free value from it. But also, we're in a format right now where if you can have a lot of grade 1, a lot of PGs in hand, it's really value against Ange, against what's it called, Megiddo, Grand Blue Megiddo, against a bunch of stuff. Like, it's just value to have more PGs. One Punch D Police. If I can just PG them, then it's super value. So you can call it out, pitch them, call over them, retire them, and then get them back to hand. And so it's just a really value card. And then probably your most important grade 1 is Dragwizard Fuamnach. And so she's really awesome because she's your early game filter. And so what she does is you can rest one of your Ritual units, ideally your starter, and pitch this card and draw a card. And so it may seem simple, but what that does is that's setting up your Ritual. And so every time you do it, you're setting Ritual 1, Ritual 2, Ritual 3, Ritual 4. That's why you run 4. And if you can get 2, 3, and drop before you even stride, you're really set for the game. And you don't feel bad about having them in drop because, once again, you can return the units that you need back to deck. And so really, she's just so much value. And she's also a 14k beater once you hit Ritual 5. And so yeah, this card's just great. Definitely probably the best grade 1. Every game that I saw multiple of her was just amazing, because then from there I just gained, by the time we started striding, I was at Ritual 5, maybe even 6. The opponent really, when I put myself that far ahead, the opponent has to do a lot to catch up. So going into probably the more techie options, we have my other grade 3, which is 2 Dragheart Luard. And so he's pretty good, and so he's a free stride cost as well. The issue with him is that his on-stride skill is I have to counterblast 1, retire a unit, and I call 2. And so the reason that's iffy is because if the opponent can disrupt my board or get rid of my board, then basically when I free stride, I don't get any extra value. And while that's not terrible right now because there's not a lot of retire out, it's still just not something I wanted to deal with. And so 9 times out of 10, you don't want to ride him. You want to ride the other Luard. But if you did ride this, you didn't feel bad like some other decks in the meta. So yeah, it's a tech choice. Some people have been considering running Dark Dictator, but I ran him instead. Your next card is a grade 2 called Dragfencer Dagda. And so what he does is he's very simple. He's just multi-attack, the multi-attack option in this deck. So you can replace him with a drop zone ramp or other things. And so, but I ran the multi-attack because if I want to beat Geese, I want to be throwing as many attacks as I can at him. And that's just a helpful theory in most matches. While Premium is different, the standard rule stands. The more attacks you have, the better your deck is. And so he's just a multi-attack option in this deck. So the rest of your grade 1s are kind of utility. These next 2, Blaster Javelin and Draglancer Daellad, they're good. You run them. Obviously, they're kind of staples. What they do is they just draw, and so really they just net value from themselves. You place them. Blaster or Javelin you can place from hand, and you can just draw 1, and so you really don't lose anything from placing it from hand. Daellad, if you have to call it from deck, and so she ends up being just a +2 more often than not because you just call her from deck. But yeah, both of them are just like they're just generate value. So you're running 6 basically draw cards, and then 2 Abyssal Owl. He just when you retire him, you countercharge. You don't really run a lot of him. I tried him at 3 and 4, and he was just cloggy. Since he has to be retired by a vanguard skill, it's really not like amazing. If it was if I could retire it with anything and get the countercharge, then this card would probably be at 3 or 4. But since I have to retire with the VG skill, I only ran 2 because I could call it out, pop it, and then call actual units. And so, so yeah, that's really it for all the normal units in the deck. Going into triggers, we have 3 Belial Owl. Now, a lot of people think that you should run 4 Belial Owl in this deck, but I really have noticed that the 5k shield comes up. 5k shield value comes up because it's only a 10k shield, so it's not like the 15k shield crits now. That really comes up, but also not getting the 10k on defensive checks or offensive checks really matters in this format. What's called, depending on the deck that you're going against, like that's 2 stages. That's a stage of value that you're missing. And so I only ran it at 3 because I can still see it enough and I can still return it enough for it to matter. And so what it does is when it's retired, you just draw a card if you're at Ritual 3. So that's really good. It just makes up for itself when it's retired, but you don't need it at 4. So next you run 2 Curse-Eyed Raven. So Curse-Eyed Raven was decent. You only run it at 2 because it works with some of your strides. But all in all, what it does is you rest it, return it to deck, and you call 2 cards. And so you call those cards at rest. And so since they're already rested, you usually just want to retire them with some of your other effects. And so it's not great, but it's a way to return a stand back to deck, which is returning a trigger back to deck, which is value. But since it only has 10k shield and only gets 5k when you check it, it's not really like amazing. So I only ran it at 2. Everything else is kind of standard. You have 4 Death Feather Eagles, and so why Death Feather Eagle? Because bird is the word, and so really standard 15k shield crit and a 10k when you check it, and so really good, super value. Then you have your Darkside Trumpeter, not a bird, so it's not quite as good, but it does the same thing as the birds. So yeah. Then next you run what's called for your heals. You run 2 of the Revenger heal, and then 2 of the Abyss healer, new 20k shield heal. And so why 2-2? Well, the Revenger heal, when it's when you G guard with it, if you have another heal and drop zone, You can bind 2 and countercharge and soul charge. And so that came up a lot because sometimes you really need that 1 countercharge. The soul charge never really did. I don't think I ever did actually, but that 1 countercharge came up a lot, just giving me that extra CB for maybe a Blaster Dark Retire or an Ultima play, which I'll explain later. But it really just came up. But the reason you run 2/2 is because there's a lot of times where people are going to try to rush you early game. And so having this 20k shield in hand before you're like on grade 3 to 1 card guard like a big attack is really good. And so this came up in the Blaster matchup because just being able to guard, just being all like, all right, like that's done. Is really good, and you don't really miss out on what's called like not G guarding with it. And so the reason you run 2/2 is because if you have Abyss Healer in the drop and you still use the Revenger, you can bind the Abyss Healer steal. This says any heal. It doesn't say it has to bind a copy of itself, which a lot of people don't know. And so, yeah, that's why you run 2/2. So next, going into your G zone. You got your heavy hitter, kind of your win con. 1v3 in my matches. Luard Dragon is Zenith Peak Ultima, and so he's just ridiculous. And so he's easily become, I'd say, the best Luard Dragon or Ultimate Stride. And so since Dragfall Luard has a free Ultimate Stride, he's just so much value. So what you do is you go into him, you counter blast 2, you call 2 units, and then you get to stack 2 triggers on top. And so what that means is that depending on your line of play, if they're at 5, you stack a stand and you stack a crit on top. And what that does is you swing 24, 24, and then you swing like 50, and you stack a stand and a crit on top. His skill, drive check to stand, everything stands, drive check to crit, everything gets a crit and plus 10k. And so your columns are getting plus 30k and plus crits. All while standing, and so then you're going to reswing for 54, which is usually game, quite frankly. And then you also have the second line of play, which is stacking just 2 crits on top. And so if your opponent's at 3 and they're like have low cards in hand, you can really just punish them early and just go into him, stack 2 crits on top. And since everything that you drive check gets like power and crit, my columns would get 3 crit plus 20k, so basically plus 40k, and they'd have 3 crit. And so usually, like there was one instance where the opponent had 7 cards in hand. He had 2 PGs, but he didn't have PG for the last attack, and so he went from 3 to 6, and that was game. And so yeah, that comes up, and so people don't really consider that enough, but that's a really good line of play. So yeah, he's really arguably one of your best strides. I wouldn't say best. I'd say second best. Next, you have Dragstrider Luard. He's fairly simple. He's a free play, so he doesn't cost any soul or CB. He's quad drive plus crit, and so he puts that extra pressure on the opponent. With some guard restrict, you can't guard the grade 1s, which maybe matter in some matchups, and so definitely recommend him. Next, I ran the GB8 Dark Knight Ingramvert, and so he's good. He came up once just to build a board, and so if I had to take out anything, I'd probably take him out. But I think it's good. It keeps retiring your units while building your own board, which is kind of what this deck does. It just retires your units while building board, and then once I see an opportunity to kill, I use one of my many kill options to kill you. So yeah, the fact that he's GB8 kind of ruins him. But other than that, he's like really good. So I would say this is the best stride in the deck, but it's Drag Anger Ogma. And so this really counters a lot of your meta. So your meta, the top meta is obviously OTT Gize and Ange. And so with him, what he does basically is you retire your board and you rip 5 cards from their hand. And no matter what deck that you are, no matter how many cards you have in hand, if you have 15, that may be too many. But if you have 12, 13 cards in hand and I rip 5 of them, your game plan has to change. And if I can change your game plan, I have control of the game state. And so, because let's think about it, they're probably going to have 1 card for striding and then 3 cards at least for guarding. And so if I can rip 5 of them, then really you only have 4 combo pieces, which I may be able to take out of your hand if I can put enough pressure. And so no matter what deck that you are, if I can rip 5 cards from your hand, I'm in control. Like, I just have so much control of the game state, all while keeping like 10 cards of my own. So he's amazing. He's just hard. He does so much work against Ange and against OTTGs. So next, kind of my avatar, Spectral Blaster Diablo. So he actually won me a game because restanding is good. So what he does is he just restands. You get 4 drive checks. And so the only issue is that he's kind of heavy. And so the Retire 3 is not so much heavy, but it's the CB2 that can really slow you down, because then you can take away costs for the rest of your game plans. So you have to be very careful with using his skill, because if you put yourself in a hole where you can't get out of the CB2 cost, then you're kind of doing more damage, unless you win. So I won with him because I sacked, got 2 crits in the stand. So yeah, he's great. I love him. So I definitely run him again. So the next card is kind of a definite check choice. It's really there for the OTTGs matchup. And so it's Dark Dragon, Carnivore Dragon. It's from the trial deck, the Luard trial deck, and its skill is simple. You retire 1, and your opponent chooses 2 cards to retire. If they can't, then you gain your front row. You choose 3 units, and they get plus 4K. And so this came up in my top 4 matchup, and so I strode into him, and I managed to make 2 30K columns on my rear guards, which, if you know Geese, he's 30K base, and so that's just the magic number, all while making him 37. And so having those magical numbers for 1 turn against Geese just did a lot, because they couldn't, they had to force more cards from hand. And so also he's free, so you don't, like, if I had no CB, and so I still had this line of play open. And so, because a lot of Geese players will either give you 1 or give you no CB to work with. And so you got to be able to make free plays. And so he's the freest. And so really, I love it. Really helped a lot. And so next, how you win the OTT Geese matchup, and probably the reason it's going to get pushed down in the meta, not out, because it's still really good, is Dark Dragon, Phantom Blaster Diablo. And so what he does is he gains a crit, gains 10K, and red text when he swings. If I retire 3, you have to retire 2 of your rear guards, and if you can't, then what's called you cannot guard from hand. And so the issue is that if they have G guards, good G guards, then they can probably guard them still, even without retiring. But the great thing is that against OTT Geese, they don't have G guards, and they can't retire their rear guards. And so no matter what, they just have to take it. And so he's like plus 10K crit, so that's 2 damage for sure, and you run 10 crits. So if you can get drive check a crit, that's 3-4 damage. And so that's how I won my OTTGs matchup. And so yeah, he's always going to be relevant, because you can always catch an opponent slipping, like, oh, you don't have enough rear guards and you're low on G guards, or you don't have good G guards. Let me go into this and basically secure game, like, especially with the new 10K buff on triggers. He's just become really, really strong. So definitely just a 2. Thought about running at 4, but went with 2 because it was a safe number. So next is probably your go-to stride in most scenarios. It's Dragabyss Luard. And so the thing about Dragabyss is that he's just value. He calls 2 grade 1s from deck, which end up being some of your draw grade 1s, so you plus, and he retires one opponent rear guards. And so he just generates a lot of value, but he also has a good GB3 that gives your unit front row plus 10K for every count of 4 grade 1s you have in draw. And so he can really ramp your columns, like plus 10K, plus 20K, plus 30K if the game gets really out of hand. And that really helps against Ange. While they have great G guards with a lot of shield value, if I'm attacking you for plus 20, plus 30K, they have to guard more from hand. And so that really keeps them honest and keeps things from getting out of hand in terms of their shield value. So you're forcing a lot of G guards with just this card. And so that also sets you up for a Diablo play or something else. And so for your G guards, you only run 4. You run 1 Drag Strider Branach. And so I only ran 1. because I just wanted to use it once to get cards in drop zone for Dragabyss. If I can use this and then go into Dragabyss, usually Dragabyss is giving plus 20k, plus 10k to my front row, all while, once again, I'm retiring my opponent's rear guards and building columns. And so that's really nice. Then you run 2 Plotmaker Dragon. Very simple, 25k shield, super free. So it's probably always going to be in the deck. And then lastly, probably your best G-Guard is Witch Queen of Iniquity, Giletto. And so the reason I love this card so much is that it really works well with the new Blaster Javelins, who have 10k shield value. So what she does is you go into her, you unflip a G-Guard, and you move 2 of your grade 1s to Guardian Circle. If you moved 2, you get to draw 1. And so what you do is you pitch 1 with your G-Guard. You go into her, you move 2 Blaster Javelins, or maybe a Blaster Javelin and a 5k grade 1, and you're guarding 41, 46. And that's a 1-card guard against a lot of decks. And so being able to 1-card guard all while drawing a card, basically guarding for free, is a lot of value, because I can return my grade 1s, and so I can call them back next turn with Dragabyss, and so I'm not going to miss the fact that I lost 2 grade 1s that turn. So it's just a lot of value and clears up space on your board, which sometimes you need to do. So definitely the best G Guardian in my opinion. So yeah, that's really my deck. So it was 10 rounds in total as the first place winner, and my matchups, I mostly faced, there was a lot of good Grand Blue players. I played against a lot of Novas and a lot of Deep Police. And so Premium is a really unexplored format. And so Victor was on the rise, which I really think is good, because it just multi-attack pushes out a lot of decks. And so that deck was really good. I played it twice in Swiss, and really Ultima was my answer for that. So that was, going into Ultima, they don't really have a answer. And Ultima, if you can clap back with Ultima, since he's so free, I would have 0 cards in hand, but I would be able to go into Ultima and I'd just win, because Dragfall has a free strike cost. And so playing against Deep Police, you just search out your PGs, which is why I said the PG is the main unit, because there are a lot of decks that just swing really big right now. And so you're just like, oh, I can search my PG just to nullify your attack and all your hard work. Well, yeah, I win. Like, very simple. And so that's that matchup. That deck needs to get more fleshed out, but that matchup still isn't super hard for you. Grand Blue is very different. So against Grand Blue, Drag Anger came up a lot, and so forcing my opponent to discard. Really, while it kind of helps the Grand Blue win con, it really sets them back on what they do, because they're all like, I have no cards in hand to guard. And so it really kept a lot of pressure on them, because nowadays Grand Blue players simply try to generate a lot of hand and turtle up until they can go into a Megiddo play. And so Drag Anger keeps them honest and says, no, you're going to have to, play with me, and you're not going to have any cards in hand. And so I kept the pressure on constantly. And the thing is that with this deck, you really want to, in most matchups, the reason you run 4 of the grade 1 that discards itself and draws, and 4 Slaptail, is because you want to try to Drag Anger first stride. A lot of times they can't, they don't have a board, and if I can make you discard 3, 4, or 5 first stride, I probably won flat out. Like, you don't have any cards in hand to make any good plays on your first stride. So me being able to do that, you're probably going to no guard everything just so you can keep what little cards you have in hand, and I'm just going to push you up on damage. So I'd say that's the game plan for my deck. And so it came up a lot. I probably used this 6 games. It won 2 games, used it in 6. So I love this card. Definitely MVP. Then in top 8, so I played Victor, I played OTT Geese in top 4, then I played Ange. And so against Victor, it was a good matchup, but like I said, Ultima is the great clapback, and so they'll force your hand, but you just go into Ultima, and they just can't really do anything about that. So next is OTT Geese. That was probably my toughest match of the day, besides one GB matchup in Swiss. And so against that, you just really gotta, you go face, like I was calling cards since turn 1 and just rushing, and they kept swinging at my rear guards, but I was fine with that because the game plan is I need to get you to 3 or to 4, and since they can heal, they heal a lot, and since they get so many cards in hand, if you let it get to late game and they're at low damage, you're probably not going to win as the shadow player, even though you have the out, unless you sack them. So I put him at 3. He was at 4. He healed down to 3, which is fair. He only got 1 heal. He was trying to get another. But then I went, like I said, I went through both Dragabyss. I went to Carnivore, keeping on the pressure, and then I ended it out with a Phantom Blaster Diablo. Drove check 2 crits, and so I really only needed 1, but the second one was the icing on the cake, which I really appreciated because it took a lot of stress away. I knew I won after that. So that was that was definitely my toughest match. Shout out to Hank, definitely the best player I've ever faced. And, he's a 10 out of 10 player. And then in my top 2 matchup, I went against Ange, and so Drag Anger, it's a lot. So just ripping cards from his hand, that way he couldn't make any good plays. And then I just Dragabyssed and beat him with columns. And so that's how I won that. And so, but yeah, guys, that's my list. And if you have any questions, comments below. We are HAX VGC, and we're going to be trying to bring you a lot more top tier content. What I mean is just more competitive content, all while, being a good and healthy Vanguard community. And so really want this game to grow. And so we'd love you guys' support. And we're hoping that content like this is what you want. So take it easy, y'all. Love y'all. Peace out.